In this bulletin, at least 9 people dead and many more missing as Queensland faces its worst floods in decades.
This weather, I think, is it might be breaking our hearts at the moment, but it will not break our will.
Parts of Toowoomba and towns in Lockyer valleys left unrecognisable after an inland tsunami. 6,500 homes and businesses facing flooding in Brisbane as the water rapidly rises. And the nation responds with more Defence Force personnel deployed to the flood zones.
Five to the white. White shots on.
Wow. Let's recap what we now know about Queensland's worsening flood catastrophe. The death toll now stands at 9 and 66 others are still missing. All those killed were either caught in the Toowoomba flash flood or were in the Lockyer Valley. People living in low-lying parts of Brisbane are being advised to move to higher ground, and more than 6,500 homes will be inundated when the floodwaters peak at this time tomorrow. Police say at this stage there are no forced evacuations. Car parks in the city have thrown open their gates to let motorists out. Some train services have been cancelled and the city's ferry service has been suspended. The town of Caboolture, north of Brisbane, is now reportedly isolated. Thousands and thousands of megalitres of water are being released from the Wivenhoe Dam as it fills rapidly. And towns in central Queensland and the state's west are facing new flood threats. The Queensland floods are set to rival the 1974 disaster. The Brisbane River will peak at 4.5 metres on Thursday, flooding 6,500 homes and affecting 16,000 more. The crisis started with an inland tsunami swept through Toowoomba, Murphy's Creek, Grantham and Ipswich.
The sheer terror was unthinkable as a wall of water ripped through Toowoomba and surrounding areas. Residents perched on rooftops, praying for rescue. Cars were thrown around and trees uprooted. That water's now heading east, through the Lockyer Valley to Brisbane. The Queensland Premier describes the situation as desperate and bleak.
Given the circumstances, we hold very grave concerns for many of those people who are unaccounted for in this region.
The flash flooding came with little warning, caused by a sudden downpour, up to 150 millimetres within a few hours in some places. Residents were caught off guard and rescuers couldn't reach them because they couldn't fly their choppers in the bad weather. With water surging into the already overflowing Wivenhoe Dam, more water has to be released into the swollen Brisbane River.
That means that the Brisbane area will now have to reconsider the implications of the water likely to come down out of Wivenhoe.
Torrential rain is making things worse. In Toowoomba, rescuers have checked cars and houses and found no more bodies, but that may not be the case elsewhere.
In the Murphy's Creek and Grantham area in particular, certainly it is expected that we will find further persons deceased in those areas.
5,000 people were urged to flee the Lockyer Valley last night before a 7-metre wall of water descended upon them. Rachel Baker, 7 News.
Queensland Premier Anna Bligh issued dire warnings for Brisbane and Ipswich during a media conference just moments ago. But she's also urged residents to remain calm.
I understand for many, many people in Ipswich and in Brisbane, particularly those who endured the 1974 flood, that we are now in a very frightening experience. Can I appeal to everybody that it's times like this where we all need to make an effort to stay calm, to be patient and to stick together. Now is a time to be checking on neighbours, on elderly people in your neighbourhood, to be checking on family and friends. If you live on high ground in Brisbane, now is a time to be reaching out to friends and offering help and offering, where necessary, a bed for the night over the coming 2 to 3 days. For those who are living in some of the lower lying areas and the identified suburbs, now is the time to be making whatever preparations you can, and I would encourage you to be overly cautious. It's better to be inconvenienced and find that your preparations were not necessary than the alternative.
A hotline has been set up for friends and relatives of those missing in the flash floods in Toowoomba, Murphy's Creek, Grantham and Withcott. You can call 1300 993 191 for more information.
Prime Minister Julia Gillard also spoke a short time ago. She offered up her condolences to those who had lost loved ones.
For many days now, Queenslanders have been battling with floodwaters and the misery that floodwaters bring. And many Australians have watched this battle and they've shown their sympathy and support by donating to the various flood relief efforts. I'm sure that many Queenslanders and Australians right around the nation would have been hoping that the worst of this was behind us and that we were shortly to move from the immediate crisis into a recovery phase. Tragically, that hasn't occurred. Yesterday, we saw some simply shocking events in Toowoomba and other communities in the Lockyer Valley. Literally walls of water smashing into cars and to buildings. We've seen very dramatic images of cars tossed around, of people on roofs of houses and on the roofs of cars, and people literally hanging on for dear life to trees and to signposts. I'm sure those images have shocked Australians. That means that now, of course, we are in a situation where, as a nation, we are grieving the loss of 8 Australian lives, 4 of them children. 72 Australians are unaccounted for, and that means in Queensland and around the nation there are people who are frightened, people who are desperately waiting for news of their loved ones, a weight that would be bearing so heavily on them. It's very hard to imagine what a weight like that is like. So to those people who are bereaved, to those who are now waiting for news of their loved ones, I want to say to them as Prime Minister, my thoughts and my sympathies are with you. The thoughts and sympathies of all Australians are with you in these dreadful and difficult circumstances.
Prime Minister Julia Gillard there. Well, let's return to our weatherman David Brown with the latest on the conditions in Queensland's southeast. Hello again, Brownie. Has the rain started to ease?
Well, Sally, I do have some good news. Yes, the heavy rain is now easing over the Wivenhoe area. In fact, as we take a look at the radar, you'll notice there's still quite a lot of rain, well, persisting over the southeast corner, but the heavy falls are now moving south of Wivenhoe. You may recall earlier this afternoon we had rainfall rates of 50 millimetres of rain every hour falling over the Wivenhoe catchment. That's now eased back to around 20 odd millimetres per hour, and we're expecting further moderation over the next couple of hours, which is good news. Now, since 9 o'clock this morning, we've had 100 millimetres recorded at Amberley, only 9 millimetres at Toowoomba, 40 at Gatton, and in Brisbane, 32 millimetres of rain. The rain's still building across Brisbane, as we can see from the radar. We'll probably end up with around about 60 odd millimetres of rain, but I guess now all we have to do is just wait for that record flood to head towards Brisbane City. Sally?
Thanks for that, Brownie, and of course we'll check in with you a little later on in the bulletin. And we'll have more on the Queensland flood crisis next in 7 News.